Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Laureline Hoyt. I'm the Executive Director of the Talwar Network of Engaged Universities, a growing global coalition of 424 civically engaged universities in 84 countries around the world. And I'd like to welcome you to the third workshop in the Communiversity series, which is a collaboration with the Open Society University Network. OSUN and the Talwar Network share a global vision of uniting universities around the world in collaborative research and learning projects and preparing students to become engaged citizens. And each month, Communiversity features an outstanding leader in the field of university civic engagement. And these virtual workshops are designed to highlight the most innovative community university research that's happening in different corners of the world. And these workshops also aim to support, this is a very important feature, to support the university students and staff and faculty all around the world who are working to develop long-term sustainable community partnerships as a central feature of their research. And I'm really humbled and very honored and delighted to welcome today Dr. Robbie Shibley. Dr. Shibley is the director of the Center for Civic Engagement and Community Service, and also a lecturer in public policy and international affairs at the American University of Beirut. Under his directorship, the center has received numerous prizes acknowledging their innovative practices and research, including the McJanet Prize for Global Citizenship. So Dr. Shibley, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And without further ado, we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. I'm privileged and honored to be with you. Thank you so much, Lorraine and Kathleen, Rose, and special thanks to Pekinam, who's been coordinating with me for the last couple of months, and thank you for all what you've done so far. So this presentation will go for around, as we decided, agreed upon with the Pekinam and the rest of the team, for around 1 hour, followed by 20 minutes of Q&As, and then we'll wrap up, see taking the feedback from, based on the feedback of the participants. I will start my PowerPoint presentation. Let me share the screen. Okay. It's there. Can you see it?
Yep, all good.
Yes. Okay. So the title of my presentation today will be about the community engagement of AUB as a frontliner. It could be, I put the title in marginalized landscape. It could be contested landscapes, war-torn, marginalized. It applies to all of the above. And I start by putting a perspective of where we are at. So this is the American University of Beirut, Lebanon, which is, it has a strategic location within the Middle East. AUB, I think it is the most renowned university in our region. It was established in 1866, and it was actually created to respond to humanitarian crises. Back then, there was also crises regarding other kinds of refugee that I will be discussing about in today's presentation. But even within the mission statement of AUB, service is an integral part. So it talks about service to the people of Middle East and beyond. And throughout AUB's history, whether through its medical center, its the work of the faculty, the staff, the students, AUB has graduated, I think, the most prominent leader across the world. We have the alumni are in tens of thousands. Even among the stakeholders that are currently taking positions as decision makers in the Middle East, you will see that a vast majority of them would be from AB's graduates. So it is, when it comes to its research, it's ranking, I think on top of the list in the region. Maybe it comes at first or second sometimes. Globally, it's ranking also among, last time in the THE, it was, I would say, maybe 240. So civic engagement, the Center of Civic Engagement, it was established in 2008. And that followed the 2006 July war. So back then, a lot of students, faculty, and staff, I was part of, we started something called a reconstruction unit. And we went to the places that were totally destroyed. And each one of us, based on our domain, our discipline, our expertise, tried to help in the reconstruction process in any means possible. 2008, AUB decided to harness this growing momentum and establish a Center of Civic Engagement. So we've been there for around 15 years now. So currently our mission statement would read as follows. So we leverage operational research and across campus socially responsive partners to tackle most pressing societal challenges facing Lebanon and beyond. Our overarching agenda integrates developmental planning that is aimed to empowering the marginalized with transformative education for AV students. And for time being, we have like 3 cross-cutting tenets that I will be discussing within the time frame that we have. Community action program, general education through civic engagement, and the last one is community development projects. So that's how we started. In 2006, following the war, these were the sites in the villages and the towns that volunteers of staff, faculty, and students we were exposed to. And with time, myself, I was a graduate from the School of Architecture and Urban Planning, Urban Design. We did all we can to support in the rebuilding process. And within few weeks or few months, we were actually supporting in the rebuilding of hundreds of houses. Meanwhile, I was teaching in the landscape department, and our student body, our students wanted to also engage in the reconstruction activities and in the reconstruction process. So this was a part of a final year program. We took students to to access the sites. They met with the people. They came up with different ideas for interventions, and many of those projects were implemented. Then we scaled up this initiative, and based on final year projects, I started something called Remodeling hardscapes. And if you look at this image, which is taken from this picture, this is a street on the former green line that used to divide between East Beirut and West Beirut. So Lebanon Civil War that extended from 1975 and ended, supposedly it ended in 1990 with the Taif Accord. It ended the hostilities, it ended the clashes, the war, but a lot of it wasn't able to heal the deep-seated scars. So this was on a street that that demarcated that green line. It's a highway, but still, after maybe more than 20 years or 25 years since the war ended, both neighborhoods regarded as still as a green line. So instead of having prime activities along this highway, they're still treating it as a backyard of used for like small scale industries. Like here, it is a wheel repair shop. And since I was teaching in a department of a landscape design and landscape architecture, that wasn't a normal site for the students. So instead, this is an acacia tree. Instead of it blossoming and having a nice bench beneath it and have maybe you know, a water fountain or what have you, the thing that designers would like to see, it's being used to hang tires on it. So for the owner of this shop, the most convenient use of this acacia tree was for him to hang tires. So this is where the idea of remodeling hardscapes emerged. This cover page is exactly reflecting what you see here, but we were stuck between keeping things as they are with this morphosis process, or trying to reshape or modify things. And in order to do this, the modification, in the Middle East, we have, there's been various reconstruction process or rehabilitation processes whereby the idea or the concept of modifying or changing would be clearing everything, raising it to ground zero, and coming up with something which is totally new, but it will backfire because these projects or these interventions wouldn't be contextual or wouldn't have relevance to the activities or the social fabric around them. Our school of thought or our perspective to changing things would be similar to what you see here. Can we put soil within these tires and plant our seeds and let nature reclaim itself? So what I'm trying to say here is that healing is a long process. It requires a lot of patience. It will require a lot of care and attention for it to heal properly and to be contextualized. And this applies to our way of work throughout all our operations in the center with the students and with the faculty members. And as you can see, when we started the remodeling hardscapes, every student would summarize the problematic with one picture. So it will be these final year project will extend over 2 semesters. The first semester, context analysis, participatory data finding with the community. Then we will end up by defining a problematic, and the hardest part for the students was to capture all of it in one snapshot, in one picture, because if they were able to do that, then it would be easier for them to develop a strategic intervention. And as I mentioned, by the end of the year, jurors would come, who are stakeholders. Every stakeholder has a responsibility related to the area intervention or the theme that the students have been working on. And as I mentioned earlier, many of those projects were implemented. So we realized, and the students realized, AUB realized the importance and the significance of this kind of work and the significance of the operational research and in marginalized neighborhood across Lebanon. Instead of individual work, we went to work with students on teamwork and coming up with the projects that deal with pressing issues facing our communities. So that was a big success. But so we went from working in a classroom, working with then building partnership across different departments, and eventually we had to extend to the growing number of AB students who were very interested in joining this kind of work, and most notably the scholarship programs. So for us at AB, we have 5 or 6 programs that provide tuition and accommodation for the students who are academically excelling and who want to give back to their community. But for them to be eligible for this award, they also have to commit for a what we call the community action plan. And this is a program that is developed across 4 years, across 3 years for some students. It could extend to 4 or 5 for the undergrad, and the same model, maybe we put it on a fast track, applies to the graduate students. So if you look at this model, it starts here with a series of volunteering rotations. So this extends over the 3 years, and it can, as I mentioned, it can go more if the students are staying for 4 or 5 years, followed by workshops, community-based internship, and the final milestone, it culminates in what we call the community service project. Can you hear me well?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So with the volunteering, which is the first milestone, so scholars are matched to appropriate opportunities with diverse humanitarian organizations and agencies that reflect the dynamic needs of targeted communities, as well as students' expertise, interest, and availability. And this is not, and the main idea here is that students will go out there. For many, it would be their first time ever that they worked with the civil society organizations or NGOs. They learn a lot by working hand in hand with the communities, with the community partners, and for many students, they even learn by reflecting on experiences that were not as satisfying as they envisioned for it to be at the beginning. So they learn from the good experiences, the mediocre, and the bad ones. The way we do it is that on a weekly basis, we announce for these volunteering activities, and students can sign on our, they receive an email, they can log into our website, we have it on Twitter, on our social media, Facebook, what have you, so they can, so this is on a bi-weekly basis, it's circulated, it's shared with all students that we have on our database. Then every now and then, whenever we have an interesting opportunity that might pop up during those couple of weeks, we will also add it to the list, and students can also participate if they are interested. Within the so we share with the students, and also students can themselves look for opportunities and share with us. So we need to do also our own vetting. We need to make sure that those community partners or community organizations are apolitical, they are a-religious, They are, they're open to all groups in Lebanon, because you need to take into consideration that this is a highly polarized country with fragmentation across sectarian lines. And this is something that we do not want our students to participate with organizations that do not share our values and ethos. So students can share with us, but on a condition that they can only work with volunteer with those agencies after receiving the approval from our side. We do our own vetting and our own due diligence. Sometimes the center leads on offering these volunteering opportunities. The largest was following the the August 4, 2020 explosion. Many of you might have heard of it. This was I think the largest non-nuclear explosion on planet Earth that's been ever recorded. It happened maybe 3 kilometers away from our offices here. All the windows here were shattered. Offices were also damaged, and this explosion it caused a lot of deep wounds for Lebanese in general, and specifically residents of Beirut. So within, I think the next day, the second following the explosion, we put on our we announced for volunteers to join our efforts, just to go down there to the neighborhood surrounding the blast and trying to figure out what is it that we can help and support with. Like within maybe less than an hour, we had more than 1,000 volunteers registering for the work. We got ourselves ready. There were a lot of, we went down to ground zero. We just helped with the cleaning the debris, cleaning the broken, the shattered glasses. People were, as you can imagine, they were in total, like they were shocked. Like we helped in any means possible, and we had stations there, and the students stayed every day. They would go from our work would start at 7 in the morning, and they would stay late in the evening. And so we helped at the beginning, and this came at a phase where we had almost no presence of state authorities. Also, it needs to be mentioned here that Lebanon is undergoing a severe economic collapse, stagnation within in the political arena, and in 2019 there were protests against corruption across the country, delegitimizing political factions, the regime. So there was distrust between the people and the state authorities. That's why they weren't present down there at ground zero, and everything, all kind of support was handled by volunteers. And our work, our activities included addressing urgent needs, clearing debris and shattered glass from streets and homes, mirror repair such as sealing broken windows with plastic and removing dangerous objects at risk of falling on residents, assisting experts in rehabilitation work, plastering, sanding the walls, painting, roof insulation, woodworks, glassworks, metal roof insulation, name it. So the students did all of this. And so yesterday, we usually, for every year, we hold an annual NGO Forum. where we invite around 120, because that's how much our upper campus can accommodate for as many booths. We invite around 120 most active organizations that we've been working with for the year. We invite keynote speakers, and the aim here is to have an inspirational leader working in the civil society, talk to the students, provide lessons learned, opportunities for volunteering work, internships, or even opportunities for employment in this field. Students are in direct contact with those agencies. And as I mentioned, we just finished the annual NGO Forum yesterday. So it goes for 2 days. We have panel discussions. We have NGOs having their booths across the AUB campus. And it becomes like an event where the work of the civil society is being celebrated. Maybe I have a video here I can show.
We organized this annual event to highlight the significant role of civil society and non-governmental organizations in instilling positive change throughout Lebanon's most underserved communities.
What we do at Ruwad is actually try to address the challenges of dual marginalization from both sides. Society has forgotten people who live on the margins, but us in the private sector sit on the margins voluntarily.
Many other people who are working on developmental issues. What kind of shared learning is there about these models? Yours seems successful.
It's important to have a fair because like young people get exposed to the number of NGOs working in each sector. They get to know people, do connections.
Usually we accept people looking for internships or volunteering or even jobs.
نحن من جمعية لاكتيكا. هدف الجمعية مثل ما نكون شايفين promote, protect and support breastfeeding، حماية الرضاعة الطبيعية بلبنان.
مهارات فاونديشن هي جمعية بتاعنا بحرية التعبير.
نحن جمعية المبادرة الفردية لحقوق الإنسان مصير، والهدف الأول اللي نحن عم نشتغل عليه هو حملة جنسيتي كرامتي يلي عم نطالب فيها الدولة أنها تعدل قانون الجنسية لتكون الأم قادرة تعطي جنسيتها لأولادها.
Foodplus is an NGO in which we collect leftover food from hotels and restaurants.
I'm from Sombola and we work with non-formal education for Syrian refugees. And today at this NGO Forum, it's really useful for us to get to meet not only other organizations working in the space, but really understand what youth are interested in, because we're constantly looking for support with running our activities. There's so much need on the ground and we really need support. And we've had students today who've been really interesting.
نحن اليوم هون لحتى بصراحة نحكي عن المجالات اللي عنا نقدر نستقطب متطوعين من قلب الجامعة من الطلاب.
We are recruiting volunteers ليساعدونا بالبلاد درايفز to improve our society.
اجينا نشارك بالNGO Fair لأنه بيهمنا كتير إنه نوعي الطلاب إنه كيف أول شغلة كيف يوصل للAEDs اللي موجودين هون on campus اللي تشامس فاند قدمتهم، وكيف يعملوا CPR، ونخليهم كمان يجوا لعنا يعملوا EKGs ليشوفوا قلبهم إذا عندهم عرضة لأنه يصير عندهم أو لا.
You will not parachute yourself into solutions from outside, and you don't think that you know better than the community what their issues are and what their problems are. This is how we started. Actually, we co-design everything that we do with them. We are not smarter than they are. We will never be smarter than they are. We will basically hear their issues and tell them about tools and capabilities and things that they can use to solve their problems, which they have addressed.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
Okay, so this is maybe now it gives you a better idea of the NGOs, what we do with the civil society and our annual forum. The second milestone within the community action program, civic action program, community action program is the community-based internships. So our students are required to by their second year to go for to secure internship opportunities. So what we do is that we connect them to the network that we have, or again, they can come up. It's almost the same process that we have with the NGOs for the volunteering opportunities. But here, every student, they have to put between 80 and 100 hours of their time. That's to commit for 80 or 120 hours. For the ones who have professional, they need to do professional internships. What we ask them is that on top of their let's say 8 weeks, they need to spend 3 additional weeks extending what they've learned to the community partners. So this also applies to all the scholars that we work with, and that is the second milestone of the community action program. The third milestone, the series of workshops. So these are the essentials, and these workshops are tailored. They're sequentially tailored, and they are directly aligned to the academic journey of the students. So for students who are on their junior years or the sophomore, they start with workshops on just introduction to civic engagement. Then we go into story making and multimedia techniques, fundamentals for social media, how basically working with them on how do you write if you're tweeting on a volunteering opportunity that you've been engaged with, whom should you whom should you tag, what terminologies need to be used, did you take approvals from for using this slide or picture or what have you. So we go into all of these basics, more into the advanced and the second level, when we are preparing them to get more engaged within their community service project. We start giving them research methods, trauma-informed interview techniques, gender analysis framework. Then the last phase is how do you present your work in a elevator pitch, how you develop a proposal, and then how do you end up after implementation doing the monitoring and evaluation for the final report. The last milestone are the community service projects. So the first 3, the volunteering rotations, the internships, and the workshops. These are preparatory phase for the that culminates in a community service project. For me, this is something similar to a thesis, but this is for undergrad students, thesis or a final year project. This phase extends along 3 semesters. For some students, it can go for 4 semesters or maximum 5 semesters, but it requires it requires this significant amount of time. So there are 3 main phases for it. It starts with the assessment. This is where we form the teams and the themes. After that, we discuss with the students what do we mean by a theory of change. The second phase is drafting the first concept of intervention, developing the budget, and then ending up by the end of the second semester or by the end of phase 2 of a detailed proposal. And the last phase is the implementation, where teams we earmark funding per student. This funding can go between 500 to 1,000 or 1,500 per student, depending on the scholarship program that they are coming from. And they work in teams, and we make sure that this money is not spent within what we call a transfer of commodities model. We make sure that only 33% of the funding of the allocated money goes to purchase equipment. 33% is for personal development of the students, and the remaining 33% is for logistics. This is somehow, for us, it's simple. It seems a bit complicated for students at the beginning. So for that, we have developed a manual, a CSP handbook, whereby we provide every student with one of those handbooks. We sit with them for to introduce them to the overall process. They take their time to read it thoroughly. They come back to us with questions, and that all happens before we start phase 1. So this is phase 0. Phase 0 is that all students are aware of the requirements. They are aware of also about the policies and procedures that we as a university abide by, and that this is also part of students' requirements. We also, part of the handbook is the template, and every program has something unique or specific in its template when it comes to the deliverables, and most notably when it comes to the vetting procedures. I will just give you an example here of how does it start. This is a project on economic resilience. It starts with when students choose a destination or location, they run a background about the area, they do situation analysis with the communities, they do consultation, they come back to us, to our team, we help them try to give them some tools and put them in contact with mentors and experts who can also help them or guide them throughout the development of their idea for intervention. We get community experts for students to build their knowledge on that specific sector that they are targeting. There are consultations with faculty mentors. Then they develop a prototype for interventions. They go out there, they implement it, and the project is operational. So this is the system. We start with a theme problematic, as I mentioned. We do assessment, stakeholder mapping, designing strategic intervention, implementation, reporting, and these are the different levels. And again, every year we have around 30 projects that are being implemented, and 30 others are in the pipeline of implementation. We do not impose any theme or any idea for intervention. All what we ask the students to do is that abide by a coherent methodology of work. And this is just an idea of the different themes or projects that have been implemented. The second milestone that the center is leading on is on general education. So the first one, when with the CAP, this is part of the extracurricular requirements of the specifically for the scholarship students. Now AUB wants to extend this experience, the student experience, to all of undergrad and graduate students who in the general education model. So I've been chairing that committee for the past couple of years, and since I'm very well aware of the capacities and the resources at the different levels and the different faculties and departments, with the support or in coordination with the representatives, faculty members from the different departments, we try to come up with a model which is applicable to, again, to those different levels of readiness. So the first track, which is the community engaged learning, this is where you would designate a 3 credits course. But for this course to be registered as a community engaged learning, it needs to abide by the 3 requirements. One is that the course needs to address societal challenge. The second is we need to ensure mutuality, that there is something in it for us as a university, students, professor, and there is something in it for the communities that we will be working with. And the third component is academically relevant fieldwork. So from the syllabus, student will know that within this course, they are required to spend out of, let's say, maybe 30–40% of with community, spend their time in academically relevant fieldwork. So that's the first. The second one, the second model is the blended community engaged learning program. Every line of these is would be equivalent to 1 credit. So we will have an online module on for introductory principles on civic engagement. The second would be students attending specialized seminars, and the last would be students designating between 30 and 40 hours in volunteering rotations, volunteering placements. So each one of those is equivalent to 1 credit. That's the second track. And the third track is community engaged internship. And this part is supervised by the students' academic advisors in close collaboration with the center. So it will be, if, as I mentioned earlier, if it is related to their area of work, area of studies, they have to add on top of it 2 to 3 weeks with community partners. This is more elaboration about the community engaged learning course. I've already discussed that. And this is how it works. These point 5 and 6, we had the partnership with the American University of Cairo. It extended for 3 years. It was a beautiful collaboration. And students, we had 3 classrooms at AUB joining 3 classrooms at AUC. We had exchange visits. Students would work separately, but under a theme, under the same theme. They would meet up in Beirut at AUB and at AUC. They will be discussing, elaborating about their findings, and it ended up coming up with beautiful presentations and beautiful final papers. Okay, this part is our last part in the presentation, which is the community development projects. This is where the center sets the roadmap and for high impact multi-year interventions. And these are kind of projects that target the most pressing challenges facing Lebanon. We've done projects in Palestinian refugee camps. This project is tackles urban agriculture, and so we rehabilitated a dilapidated center in a very informal Palestinian refugee camp for it to become like for urban greening. This is a project in also on another camp. It's like a friendly space. It became a community center for out-of-school children. This is a project in a highly informal street market in the middle of Beirut. We did the major upgrading for the street and its surrounding. This is also another informal neighborhood in East Beirut, and this project is actually on AUB's main entrance. We did a pedestrian-friendly model, and it was implemented 3 years ago, and the aim is to extend this concept to the whole neighborhood around the university. So we developed our experience with the community development projects till the next pivot came with the Syrian crisis. And now I'll present Project Ghata because it encompasses all what I've talked about, from volunteering to the internship to the CSPs to a community engaged learning courses, community development projects. So in one project, you would see all of the components that that the center is working on. They are all summarized in within this intervention. It started, as you may know, the Syrian war started in 2011. But in in December 2012, Lebanon was hit by blizzard. It was named Alexa. I think it was the most severe registered for the past 50 years in the Middle East. And a lot of refugees in Lebanon live in informal tented settlements. And these are the tents, because in Lebanon, there was no approval given for refugees to go into collective shelters. So they ended up constructing these kinds of tents in again in what is called collective shelters, and these extend from maybe 5 in one location to around 200. And as you can imagine, the conditions were very, very, very hard, and a few kids froze to death. So this really opened up the discussion and about what is it, what are our responsibilities as you know, as a university, as a students, as a staff, as alumni. How can we respond to this exacerbating crisis? And it started with volunteers sending, donating, opening up, initiating a closed donation drive. And within a few weeks, we were overwhelmed, I would say, with tons of donations, closed donations, coming from Lebanon, from the region, and from abroad. People living from Switzerland, from Australia, from the States. They shipped closed donations to us. It wasn't an easy process, especially when we went out for the distribution. It doesn't. Maybe it might seem easy at the beginning, but it's a very rigorous process whereby you have to do a sorting, you have to go down to the community, prepare a list that covers each and every person, every refugee in each and every tent. Then we go back there and distribute. But the nice part about, though it was very, it was a draining experience, but we became more aware of the challenges facing refugees on many levels. We just called for a discussion to present our findings to the AV community. And we were really it was amazing, the turnout. We had to open up 2 rooms, 2 big, like our largest auditoriums. Everyone was like ready. There was a lot of willingness, but we just needed to provide a clear direction and give some guidance of how best can we offer the support. There was, as I mentioned, there was a lot of need, but the most vulnerable were the kids. There is more than 1 million refugees in Lebanon, and 60% of them were out of school. And when we say out of school, or when we hear about the no loss generation that UNICEF talks about, it's those children roaming out on the streets. And there are many many reasons for that. There's a prejudice, threats, child labor, limited mobility, lack of support, poverty, inadequate learning environment, among many others. We did our first situational analysis, and it turned out that these were the learning environments, teaching environment that were provided to refugees. Those tents cannot last more than 3 months, and in semi-arid region, this was not adequate for any kind of programs to be delivered there. And we noticed that basically refugees are highly mobile. They just put their habitat in the back of a pickup, and they move from one location to the other based on, again, on a multiple of factors and reasons. And the way they construct their shelter is that they pour this clean base. They use available elements in the local market. They cut the sheets that are provided through the UNHCR tents or other fabric to extend this their habitat or their shelters, or which are the tents. So in order for us to provide education in such an environment, we designed our model. We called it Ghata, which means cover in English, for it to provide education, and that also provide refugees with some sense of normalcy and dignity. We started with the first unit, which is 20 square meters, based on refugees building practices. This is built from locally found material. It is can be built by 2 refugees in 3 hours, dismantled in 6 hours, then be reassembled again in a new location, and its lifespan it extends between 10 to 15 years, which is the average of any refugee crises globally. We tested the volunteers, AB volunteers. They did a fundraiser, and actually they raised around $1,200. We went to one of those informal settlements, and we tested the first model. The first model was used there as a shelter by one of the families, and they modified it according to their needs, and that's exactly what we expected. We built the second model on AUB campus, and we to run more simulation analysis on it, because our idea was to scale it across Lebanon for it to be used as a classroom. And AB professors started delivering courses there. We then launched our first classroom in East Lebanon, and what's remarkable is that once we opened up the doors for the first classroom, kids were just coming. We were overwhelmed by the number of kids who were coming there. They just wanted to go inside, be around. Maybe they were just looking for a safe environment. Maybe it was interesting for them. They were looking forward to having a new program or someone delivering, I don't know, taking care of them. But the conclusion is that there was high interest from the community and from the refugee children to attend those, to come to our ghatas. We found out that the ideal size would be 40 square meters to accommodate between 35 and 40 students. And we had to make sure, after running all the simulation, that this is a safe structure and that can resist severe weather conditions. We started assembling our first Ghata campus, was assembled in 2014. And this can give you an idea of how it works. There's a 30% of the built up, which are classrooms, administration, a kitchen, semi-dry sanitation. Then the rest, which is almost 2/3 of the space, is left for an outdoors area. Every campus accommodates between 700 to 900 students on a double shift basis. The way we do it is that we choose a land in close proximity of where refugees live. We prepare the site we lay slabs on the grade. In 2 days, we assemble our units in 4 days, and in 1 week, we have a functional school. Again, we think that we piloted an innovative program. It's contextual, it's scalable. We provide high quality education. It is holistic, integrative, student-centered, and it's all assets-based. Those schools, those ghatas, are either assembled within the informal tented settlements or in close proximity to where refugees live. These are called the collective shelters, or in between collective shelters and the informal tented settlements. We were invited in 2017. The program received a lot of recognition because it was, it was simple, impactful, and very practical. We assembled a classroom during the New York Design Week, and actually it worked. Even so, the same elements, you can find them anywhere in any country, whether in New York, in Uganda, in Lebanon, or in Iraq. We build it on material that are found in all local markets. So this was built also in 1 day. That was in Brooklyn. Okay, so from Ghata, which targets primary education, we found out that we need more in order to reinforce or build the resilience of refugees. So from that project, we extended to delivering university preparatory programs. The numbers of refugees who attend high school, so if you look at the records in Lebanon, till grade 7, in the public school system, you have around 100,000 refugees. The number drops to less than 7,000 between grade 8 and 9. And in grade 9, the number is less than 1,000. And here I'm just talking about the registered refugees in the public, in Lebanese public schools. I'm not counting the informal education or the educational services provided by NGOs. When it comes to providing refugees for opportunities in higher education, the numbers are like you can barely find a few hundreds here and there. So we designed a program to bridge that gap between secondary education and the high school, and the university level. This project has been running since 2017. It has 2 strands: a foundation program and an online programs. We also did partnership with an organization called Pro Futuro, and we've been providing, since before the pandemic, we've been providing online education annexed to our schools. So when we were hit with the pandemic and when we were under lockdown, our schools did not stop because the staff and the students were already familiar with online education. One of also our, I would say, signature project has also been the digital skills training. This is where we provide refugees and underserved Lebanese with a curriculum that allows them and give them opportunities to tap into a growing global gig economy. This project runs in 5 centers across the country. It started in 2016, and a few months ago, we finished our our last cycle, and we had reached around 3,000 participants, and we expect to resume programs as of next June. Once we were also working, we found out that a lot of students showed high level of an anxiety, and there was a lot of bullying in those schools. So we did a research with Harvard program in refugee trauma, and it turned out that that there is a high level of domestic violence, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and trauma. So we designed a school-based psychosocial support program, and now it is becoming integral to all educational services that we provide across the different projects. These interventions, and again, similar to the one that we are doing in the Ghata or in the digital skills or similar ones, are multifaceted. From one side, you have the funding agencies. From the other side, you have the local partners, the international partners. You have strategic partnerships across campus, also off campus. And I try to simplify it here. So this is where the center sets the vision, the strategy, the management. There is continuous reporting with the socially responsible donors. And there's also supervision and for the daily operations of the local implementing partners. On campus, we work with faculty members who develop the curriculum, who do, again, curriculum development, capacity building, and there's a continuous process of monitoring and evaluation with local instructors and local partners. After years, after I would say around a decade of the Ghata or working with refugees, we came up with this integrative approach whereby education, livelihood, and healthcare come under the same roof to provide or to enforce the resilience for refugees and the underserved communities. And I might end up with this video.
طب هلا اذا فتحنا مدرسه ليش بدك تفوت اذا كنت عارف تقرا وتكتب؟ ليه؟ ليه؟
C'est une structure avec des éléments en bois. Tout l'outillage consiste en un marteau et des clous. Avec 2 ou 3 personnes, on la monte en 6 heures et on la démonte en 3 heures. Quand on voudra démonter cette école et la remonter en Syrie, tout le système doit pouvoir fonctionner là-bas. En prenant les mêmes élèves, les mêmes professeurs, les mêmes salles de classe, les mêmes toilettes sèches, toute l'école pourra se remettre en marche immédiatement afin de continuer le processus d'éducation en Syrie.
To do this pilot study in the Gaeta project, to look at the impact of this restorative built environment on number one, the level of the stress of the kids. We assume that the project, our hypothesis is that the Gaeta project reduces depression in the kids, reduces the stress, reduces anxiety, increases knowledge obtainment and education, and also probably, hopefully, have some impact on the family as well in a positive way, you know.
أنا كنت بسوريا ماني مسجل بمدرسة لأنه كنت صغير. لما أنا أجيت لهون سجلت بمدرستين بس ما حبيتهم أكثر من هاي المدرسة. هاي المدرسة حبيتها أكثر الشيء لأنها كثير فظيعة.
Nearly 80 million people worldwide are forcibly displaced, with 86% in the global south and an average duration of displacement of over 20 years. Refugee children spend their early lives settled in poor communities that lack opportunities for advancement. Ghata campuses equip refugee children and their families with tools to build secure and dignified lives and to become agents of change. Ghata, meaning shelter in Arabic, is a modular structure quickly assembled by community members into a multifunctional campus for education, livelihood training, and healing. This integrative model is simple, scalable, and impactful. It is a community-driven solution with equity at its core.
So there are just 2 more slides. As I mentioned, we found out after we partnered with Ghata, we started collaborating with other universities and other organizations who are working in similar contexts. And we realized that that we have some experience in this field and that we are ready to extend our knowledge to also our other like-minded universities. So now we are setting within the center, the refugees track, looking to scale our intervention across Lebanon in the fields of digital economy, agriculture, education, and health. And these will be demonstration sites whereby we will then partner with universities in the global south and think and come up with ways whereby we can maybe learn from each other, inspire one another, and maybe export some of these projects to other destinations and similar undergoing similar situations. Thank you for your time and attention, and that's my presentation. Now I think we have like 20 minutes for questions.
Yes, please. If there are any questions.
I'll go. There's a message here by actually. Okay, from Muhab Ali. How do you maintain the funding for the community service projects with all the country circumstances? Then, okay, I'll answer the first question. Muhab asked 2 questions. Actually, the funding, that's a tricky question. That's tricky because there's so much need, and Lebanon is undergoing this economic collapse. But when it comes to humanitarian aid, I don't think there's a problem with funding. Maybe what's challenging is for agencies to know how to spend this aid in an impactful manner. And this is where universities or our center is doing some significant work. Our aim here, or our role, is not to take the role of the big humanitarian agencies. What we are trying to do is that to give support for operational research and implement pilots. We never were under the assumption that, for example, the Ghata that I presented would be scaled into more than 14 campuses across Lebanon, or to have 4 other campuses in Iraq, or in soon in other countries, hopefully. We started with 1 classroom. So the whole idea was just to build a pilot whereby humanitarian aid agencies can then maybe see for themselves, coordinate with us. If we have any knowledge that might be interesting or might be impactful, then it's up to them to take the ideas, adopt the ideas, and scale it. So for us as a center, we haven't had challenges when it comes to sustaining these programs. What we do is that, as I mentioned, we pilot, we make sure that the programs run smoothly for at least 2 years. And then after that, during that process, we would be in contact with interested community partners, whether local ones, regional or internationals. And during that process, we will be doing like a handover. So none of those schools have closed. None of our projects have stopped. Maybe there's been some gaps, funding gaps, for example, when it comes to the digital skills program, but this is a 3 months program, so it's consecutive cycles. We can wait for like 3 or 6 months for the another grant to kick in to restart. So we as a center, we haven't faced serious challenges when it comes to securing funding for the sustainability of the project. How do you mitigate the risk from students working directly with the community? And do the students face any resistance from the community? That's also extremely, extremely important. Not just with the students, also with the faculty members. And I can give you an example here. There was in one of the community-based learning classes, we wanted to make sure that it's always safe access to the community, and we always need to make sure that students, when students spend their time with the community, they do not engage in any kind of works that might be perceived in or might be misperceived by the community or the local authorities and stakeholders. So I'll show you, for example, let me share the screen again. So if you see this, can you see the slide? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so the classrooms are assembled from what we call the plywood panels. If you look at it, it looks very brute. We paint it from the inside. It's very nicely animated. The paints inside the classrooms are students can, can be as creative as they would like. But from the exterior, we always had to make sure that the schools look like this. And that was intentional. So from the exterior, you see anyone coming around the school would see these wooden structures. And we did that intentionally not to raise the anxiety among the host community, because in Lebanon, Lebanon has been hosting Palestinian refugees since 1948. And for many reasons, a lot of Lebanese have prejudice against refugees for factors or reasons that takes us hours to discuss here. So we needed to make sure that anyone coming around the school, they would know that it shows that these are temporary structures. Yet they provide they provide sense of normalcy for the refugees. But once you look at them, once you look at the plywood panels, at the wooden structures, anyone would realize that these are temporary. So this classroom with the professors, with the students, went out there and came back to class and decided that they want to paint the exterior. They didn't like the exterior. And we had to have a very intense, heated, serious conversation with the professor to forbid this kind of activity. And he needed to realize that if they do that, some people or some local authorities or stakeholders will maybe perceive these schools as permanent structures. And if this happens, it will have serious implications on the students and on the refugees and their families. So this is where it becomes a very thin line where again, we need to emphasize on the mutuality. So what is in it for us as a university, what is in it for the community, and how can we make sure that within such a high impact multi-year intervention, these kinds of programs run smoothly as long as possible. I will go to answer the other questions. Nadine, does the center work with other Lebanese universities? If yes, please tell us more. If no, why? We do work, we do collaborate, for example, in the NGO Forum. It's in partnership with the USG, which is the Jesuit University. So this is where we collaborate. This year, because of the COVID, this year and last year, we didn't invite the NGOs to have their booths on campus, but for 4 or 5 years, we did this event in collaboration. So 1 year it would be USG hosting the event, the other year it would be us. 1 year it would be them sending us their keynote speaker, the other year it would be us. And these are like the two most renowned or prestigious universities in Lebanon. I know that other universities are doing similar works, and it would be great if we have a community of practice. And we are working to, as I mentioned, maybe in my last slide, we are trying to develop a consortium of universities that are like-minded and that adopt the same approach. How do you manage to keep the students committed, and how do you deal with the dropouts? The students manual you mentioned available online. There are different modalities. In the community-based learning courses, the students who register for the course, they have to go through the whole process. We offer extracurricular on a volunteering basis for whoever is interested, and students would be interested because they know how significant these opportunities that the center provide for their academic development, for their career development, for the ones who are interested to pursue also higher education in Ivy League universities. And we have the third modality is we developed, as I mentioned earlier, a program for the 750 scholarship students. So for those students, they have to abide, it's part of the scholarship requirements. Are the government interventions supporting your work, or do you align your work with the government strategy? The government. Okay, as I mentioned, Lebanon is under severe economic collapse. The country is now undergoing, I think, one of its most critical political polarization. You know that the government is not functional as it should be. Hopefully, after the elections, things might get better. But for time being, the government is absent, not just from working with us or on education or on delivering on educational services. The government is absent from providing the basic requirements for the Lebanese citizens. And when it comes to the refugees, the Lebanese government policy could be described as to be politically correct, a policy of disinterest, to say the least. Presentation. So my questions also relate to the challenges that you face in incorporating civic engagement at AUB. This is from Evelina. How about buy-in faculty members and how you evaluate based on the research teaching activities? AUB has been honestly extremely supportive to what we've been doing because it provides, it's bringing in like added values to everyone who's being engaged. When it comes again to students' academic learning, it's for developing research that is gleaned from operating in such context of marginalization and militarization, and also it's providing, you can see that it's really changing the lives of the mostly underserved, marginalized communities across the Lebanon, whether they are Lebanese or residents in Lebanon or refugees. To institutionalize further what we're doing, AB now is keen on incorporating general education within the system, and this is what I presented in my early on in my presentation. Looking forward. Okay, I think I answered the most or all of the questions in the chat box. If anyone would like to ask more questions direct, please go ahead.
Dr. Shibli, I have a very different type of question, but I think it's relevant to many of us today. Can you say a few words, just reflect personally on your own experience with this work over many years and the ways in which you've learned to take care of yourself?
I'll answer the first part. So, so I started the presentation by the 2006 war. On a personal level, that's been one of the most determinant times in my life, because this is what changed my perspective towards my career or my involvement at the university or with the community. The Middle East has been situated on this axis of crisis for more than 100 years now, and it's always we're into those continuous, constant cycles of violence, and that we might have we might experience some I don't want to even say peace intervals, maybe some extended non-violence intervals, but then suddenly it relapses. So we need to do something to break this cycle of violence on many levels, and I fully believe that that can only start in universities. And where else but such university as AUB that's been used to like educating and graduating leaders for the Middle East and beyond. And I fully believe that this model should be applicable to as many universities as possible in Lebanon, in the region and beyond, in underdeveloped countries, in countries that are undergoing these kind of cycles of violence. And for me personally, and from my experience, what I've realized with the students is that civic engagement is a necessity. It's not a luxury, and it's not just like, and something that you annex for extracurricular so that students can check a box. It's a life-changing experience on all levels, and it's rewarding also on all levels for academic development, for coming up with brilliant research, for the direct change, life-changing impact that it has on the community. So we've done it for the 15 years. The outcomes are remarkable. It puts more obligations on us as a center and as a university that it is imperative that we extend what we're doing, and we expand and we scale and we build more collaborations, and we try to inspire if we do inspire, and we're ready to learn from the ones who are doing similar or better work. But in such context, our only hope for the future is by institutionalizing civic engagement across all disciplines. So civic engagement within such a context is aligned with crisis management, conflict resolution, upgrading informal neighborhood, promoting tolerance, supporting, reinforcing resilience. This is the notion of civic engagement in a context like Lebanon and for AUB. On a personal level and for my team, so that's a hard part to answer, but the rest we're doing fine. Any more questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I would just say that I share that belief that you've just articulated about the vital importance of having civic engagement infused into and across all disciplines at institutions of higher education. And we are very focused on building a global coalition of institutions that are civically engaged and that are making this effort a priority. And I just want to say on behalf of our membership that the work you are doing is truly at the cutting edge and the forefront of the quality and the impact that we are all striving for, and that I really want to thank you for taking the time to share in some detail your experience and to offer your model to others. It's very inspiring, and also clearly it's difficult work, and this notion of a community of practice is very central to, I think, what we need to support ourselves and to keep doing the work. And just really want to thank you for everything you've shared today. And it's been really wonderful getting to know you a bit, and I hope we'll get to connect again someday soon.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. And if I might end up by saying that we really all, as a community of practice, as you mentioned, we need to work and make sure that this kind of commitment, any kind of initiatives, because many universities do not have such maybe developed center, but you might find a professor doing remarkable work here or a department. What needs to happen is that to institutionalize this concept, to make sure that this kind of commitment is instilled and it's there to remain there for generations to come. What I personally I'm working on, and what my team and this whole unit or center is working on, is doing our best to institutionalize these activities and to ensure a buy-in across all faculties. Once we're able to do that, I think we will feel more rewarded, because this time and effort and commitment wouldn't, it would stay there for generations to come.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I think we're on time. We did good. It's an hour and a half.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you again. And thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been recorded and we'll post it on our website, and we'll certainly share it far and wide through all of our networks. So thank you, Dr. Shibli, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.